The sound of a shattering window echoed through the silent streets of Silver Creek as Sarah Norris stumbled out of the two-story boarding house, her belongings hastily stuffed into a single carpet bag that had seen better days. Blood trickled from a small cut on her cheek where Mr. Willoughby's ring had caught her skin when he'd struck her for refusing his advances. The year was 1875, and Silver Creek, Colorado, was like any other mining town that had sprung up in the West, full of promise for some and misery for others. Sarah had arrived just 3 months prior. Taking a position as a schoolteacher after her father's passing left her penniless in Chicago. The small mountain town had seemed like a blessing at first, but that was before the school board president, Vernon Willoughby, had made it clear what additional duties he expected from the town's new teacher. Sarah clutched her bag to her chest as the boarding house door flew open. Mrs. Pritchard, the owner, stood silhouetted against the yellow lamplight, her face pinched with manufactured outrage. "Indecent woman! Out with you!" No respectable establishment would harbor a woman who entertains gentlemen in her room at such hours. But Mrs. Pritchard, he forced his way in. Sarah's protest died on her lips as she saw Mr. Willoughby appear behind the landlady, straightening his vest, his mustache twitching with a smirk of satisfaction. "I'm afraid Miss Norris has shown her true colors," Willoughby announced loudly enough for the few curious faces appearing in windows to hear. "I came to discuss school matters and found her behavior most unbecoming of someone entrusted with our children's education." Sarah backed away, her boots crunching on the gravel street. The midnight air bit through her thin blouse, and she pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Her teaching position gone, her reputation shattered, her lodgings lost, all because she had refused to submit to Willoughby's wandering hands. "You know that's not true," she said, her voice stronger than she felt. "You're a liar, Vernon Willoughby." The man's face darkened as he descended the porch steps. "Mind your tongue, woman, or I'll have the sheriff run you out of town for public indecency. No one will believe a penniless outsider over a founding member of this community." Sarah retreated further into the street, her heart pounding. The few onlookers quickly closed their curtains, unwilling to get involved. Silver Creek was Willoughby's town, and everyone knew it. "Where am I supposed to go? It's midnight!" she cried, hatred and fear mingling in her voice. Willoughby smiled coldly. "Perhaps the mining camp would welcome your services. I hear they're not particular about a woman's past." The suggestion was so vile that Sarah nearly launched herself at him, but she knew that would only strengthen his lies. Instead, she turned and began walking away, her dignity the only thing she had left. "If I see you near the school tomorrow, I'll have you arrested for trespassing," Willoughby called after her. "The position has already been filled by someone more accommodating." Sarah kept walking, not allowing herself to look back as tears streamed down her face. She had no idea where she was going. The small town had only one hotel, owned by Willoughby's brother-in-law. The stage wouldn't leave until Tuesday, 3 days from now, and she had barely enough money for the fare, let alone additional lodging. The main street was deserted, storefronts dark and silent. Only the saloon at the far end of town showed signs of life, yellow lights spilling onto the boardwalk, the tinny sounds of a piano drifting through the night air. Sarah clutched her bag tighter. A respectable woman would never enter such an establishment, but she was beginning to wonder if she had any choice. As she passed an alley, a hand shot out and grabbed her arm, yanking her into the shadows. Sarah opened her mouth to scream, but a rough palm covered her lips. "Quiet now, girlie. You're coming with me." The voice belonged to Thaddeus Miller, one of Willoughby's business partners who owned the largest silver claim outside town. His breath reeked of whiskey and tobacco. "Vernon said you might be willing to make an arrangement for a place to stay." Sarah bit down hard on his hand, and when he jerked it away with a curse, She shoved her bag against his chest with all her might. He stumbled backward, giving her just enough space to bolt back to the street. "You little wildcat!" Miller shouted, recovering his balance. "You'll regret that." Sarah ran, her boots slipping on the dirt road. Behind her, Miller's heavy footsteps pursued. She was faster, but he knew the town better, and there were few places to hide in the small community. She turned a corner, hoping to lose him, only to find herself on a dead-end street that led to the livery stable. The stable door was open, a faint light glowing from within. Sarah darted inside, praying for a place to hide. The smell of hay and horses filled her nostrils as she weaved between stalls. Outside, Miller's voice called her name, taunting her. "Just looking to help you out, schoolteacher. Don't you want a warm bed tonight?" Sarah crouched behind a stack of hay bales, making herself as small as possible. She heard Miller enter the stable, his boots heavy on the wooden floor. "I know you're in here," he drawled. "Might as well come out. Town this size, you've got nowhere to go." A horse nickered nervously in a nearby stall as Miller moved deeper into the stable. Sarah held her breath, pressing herself against the rough wooden wall. "Found you?" Miller growled, suddenly looming over her hiding place. His hand reached for her, and Sarah scrambled backward, tumbling out into the open stable floor. Before Miller could grab her, the sound of a hammer being cocked froze them both. "The lady doesn't seem interested in your company," came a deep voice from the stable entrance. Sarah looked up to see a tall figure silhouetted against the moonlight. He stepped forward, and the faint lantern light revealed a man in his early 30s, dressed in worn trail clothes. A dusty cowboy hat sat low over eyes that gleamed like steel in the dim light. In his hand, a Colt revolver was aimed steadily at Miller's chest. "This ain't your business, stranger," Miller snarled, though he took a step back from Sarah. "I'm making it my business." The cowboy moved closer, his spurs jingling softly with each deliberate step. "The night is over for you, mister. Time you headed home." Miller's eyes darted between Sarah and the armed stranger. "Do you know who I am? Who my friends are in this town?" "Don't much care," the cowboy replied evenly. "All I know is you're chasing a woman who clearly doesn't want to be caught. Now, you can leave walking or you can leave otherwise. Your choice." Something in the stranger's voice, a calm certainty that promised trouble, seemed to penetrate Miller's whiskey-soaked bravado. He spat on the ground near Sarah's feet. "She ain't worth the trouble anyway. Frigid schoolmarm." With a final glare, he backed toward the door. "Watch yourself, stranger. Silver Creek isn't kind to interfering outsiders." When Miller was gone, the cowboy holstered his weapon and extended a hand to Sarah, who was still sitting in the hay. "Ethan Zankowski, madam. Are you hurt?" Sarah took his hand, allowing him to help her to her feet. "Sarah Norris. And no, not hurt, just homeless and jobless as of about 20 minutes ago." She brushed straw from her skirt, suddenly aware of her disheveled appearance and the cut on her cheek. Ethan's eyes narrowed at the sight of the cut. "Looks like someone got rough with you before that fellow showed up." Sarah touched her cheek self-consciously. "Mr. Willoughby, the school board president. He didn't appreciate my rejection of his proposition." Ethan nodded, his expression grim but unsurprised. "Not the first time I've heard that story in towns like this." He picked up her carpet bag from where it had fallen. "You got family nearby? Somewhere safe to go?" Sarah shook her head, feeling the full weight of her predicament. "No family since father died. I came here for the teaching position." She blinked back tears that threatened to fall. "I don't know what to do now." Ethan studied her for a moment, then sighed. "I've got a camp about a mile outside town. It's not much, but there's a tent you can use for the night. Better than the streets or that snake finding you again." Sarah hesitated, weighing her limited options. Trust a stranger who had just saved her, or face Willoughby, and who knew who else in the small town where she had no allies. "Why would you help me?" she asked cautiously. Ethan shrugged, his face partially hidden by the shadow of his hat brim. "My mother was left in a similar situation once. A kind stranger helped her." He gestured to the stable door. "Decision's yours, Miss Norris. But we should make it quick, in case your friend brings reinforcements." It was hardly a proper arrangement, but Sarah was running out of choices. "I accept your offer, Mr. Zankowski." "Thank you." Ethan nodded, then moved to a stall where a large buckskin horse stood. He quickly saddled the animal, working with the efficiency of a man who had performed the task thousands of times. "We'll have to ride double," he said, tightening the cinch. "Bucephalus here is strong enough to carry us both the short distance." Within minutes, they were riding away from Silver Creek. Sarah perched somewhat uncomfortably behind Ethan, her carpet bag tied to the saddle. She had never ridden astride before, and clutching the cowboy's waist to keep her balance felt scandalously intimate. As they crested a small rise, Ethan pointed to a stand of pine trees where a small campfire flickered. "Home for tonight. Tomorrow we can figure out your next steps." The camp was simple but neat. A small fire ring, a canvas tent, and a lean-to where supplies were stored. Ethan dismounted first, then helped Sarah down, his hands strong and steady at her waist. "I'll sleep out here," he said, gesturing to the fire. "Tent's yours. There's a bedroll inside." Sarah felt awkward and grateful all at once. "Mr. Zankowski, I don't know how to thank you." "Ethan," he corrected. "And no thanks needed. Just trying to balance the scales of the world a bit." He busied himself tending to his horse while Sarah entered the small tent. Inside, she found a clean bedroll and a saddle that served as a pillow. Despite the simplicity, it was a haven compared to what might have awaited her in town. Sarah sat on the bedroll, finally allowing herself to process the night's events. Her teaching career, the one thing she had trained for, the respectable profession her father had sacrificed to provide her with an education for, was gone. And her reputation, if Willoughby had his way, would be in tatters by morning. Outside, she heard Ethan moving around the camp, adding wood to the fire. She should have been terrified, alone in the wilderness with a man she'd just met. Yet something about Ethan Zankowski radiated trustworthiness. Perhaps it was the matter-of-fact way he had helped her, without expectation or judgment. Sarah touched the cut on her cheek, wincing slightly. She would need to clean it. Gathering her courage, she emerged from the tent. Ethan was sitting by the fire, a tin cup in his hands. He looked up as she approached. "Coffee?" he offered. "It's not fancy, but it's hot." "Yes, please." Sarah accepted the cup he poured for her, warming her hands around it. I need to clean this cut. Do you have any water to spare?" Ethan nodded toward a canteen hanging from a tree branch. "Fresh from the creek this afternoon. There's a clean bandana in my saddlebag if you need it." As Sarah dabbed at her cheek with the dampened bandana, she studied her rescuer in the firelight. Ethan Zankowski was tall and lean, with the weathered look of someone who spent most of his life outdoors. His light brown hair was a bit too long, curling slightly at the nape of his neck, and a short beard covered his jawline. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a clear, intelligent blue that seemed to notice everything without giving away his thoughts. "What brings you to Silver Creek, Mr. Ethan?" she asked, returning the bandana and canteen. "Cattle," he replied. "I'm scouting grazing land for my employer, the Circle T Ranch out of Wyoming Territory, looking to expand operations." He took a sip of his coffee. "And you? How does a teacher end up in a place like this?" Sarah sighed, settling on a log across from him. My father was a professor in Chicago. When he died last year, I discovered he'd left more debts than assets. I had my teaching credentials but no connections. When I saw the advertisement for Silver Creek, it seemed like the perfect opportunity. Her mouth twisted bitterly. I should have known it was too good to be true. Willoughby seems to run that town like his personal kingdom, Ethan observed. He owns the largest mercantile, has interests in half the mining claims, and his wife's family founded the town, Sarah explained. The school board was just another way to control things. I think he expected me to be some desperate spinster grateful for his attention. She stared into the fire. I never imagined he'd go so far as to ruin me when I refused him. Ethan's expression hardened. Men like that count on decent people being afraid to stand against them. He added another stick to the fire. What will you do now? I have enough money for the stage fare to Denver, Sarah said. From there, I don't know. Try to find another teaching position, I suppose, though without references. She trailed off, the reality of her situation sinking in. They fell into silence, the crackling fire and night sounds of the forest filling the space between them. Sarah felt exhaustion creeping over her, the events of the night taking their toll. You should get some rest, Ethan said, noticing her drooping eyelids. Morning comes early out here. Sarah nodded, finishing her coffee. Thank you again, Ethan, for everything. As she turned to go, he spoke again. Miss Norris, Sarah. I'm meeting with a rancher tomorrow about 10 miles south of here. Man named Preston who's looking to sell. If you'd like, you could ride along. It's in the opposite direction from town, and it would give you time to consider your options without Willoughby or his friends finding you. The offer was tempting. A day's reprieve from decisions, a chance to gather her thoughts away from Silver Creek. Are you sure I wouldn't be imposing? Ethan smiled slightly, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Company on the trail is never an imposition, especially pleasant company. The compliment, simple as it was, brought a flush to Sarah's cheeks. Then I accept. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Sarah. In the tent, lying on the bedroll that smelled of pine and leather, Sarah listened to Ethan moving about the camp, securing things for the night. A man she'd known for less than 2 hours had shown her more kindness than anyone in Silver Creek had in 3 months. It was a sobering thought, but also a comforting one. Perhaps there were still good people in this wild country after all. Morning arrived with the scent of coffee and bacon. Sarah emerged from the tent to find Ethan already up, cooking breakfast over a fresh fire. He changed into a clean shirt, though it was as worn as yesterday's, and his beard was freshly trimmed. Hope you slept well, he said, handing her a plate of bacon and beans. Better than I expected to, Sarah admitted, accepting the food gratefully. She had managed to smooth her hair and wash her face in a bit of water from the canteen, but she was painfully aware of her wrinkled dress and the small tear in her sleeve from Miller's rough handling. Ethan seemed not to notice or care about her dishevelment. Preston's place is about 3 hours' ride from here. We should be there by midday if we leave soon. They broke camp efficiently, Sarah helping to pack up the tent and douse the fire. This time, Ethan had arranged a makeshift side saddle for her using his bedroll, allowing her to ride more comfortably. As they set off, the morning sun warming their backs, Sarah felt an unexpected lightness. For the first time since arriving in Colorado, she had no schedule to keep, no expectations to meet. Just the open trail and the steady rhythm of the horse beneath her. Ethan proved to be a knowledgeable guide, pointing out landmarks and telling her about the territory. His voice, usually so economical with words, grew animated when he spoke about the land. This whole area was Ute territory not long ago, he explained as they rode through a meadow dotted with wildflowers. Beautiful country, good grazing land, plenty of water. The kind of place a man could build something lasting. You sound like you've given it some thought, Sarah observed. Ethan nodded. Been saving for my own spread for 5 years now. Almost have enough to buy a decent parcel and some starter stock. A worthy goal, Sarah said. My father always said a person should have something that's truly theirs. Your father sounds like a wise man. He was. Brilliant with books, though somewhat impractical with money. Sarah smiled at the memories. He believed education was the greatest gift he could give me, even if it meant living simply. Seems to me he was right, Ethan said. Education's something no one can take from you. The simple truth of his statement warmed Sarah. Yes, though at the moment, it doesn't seem to be worth much. Ethan glanced back at her. Don't sell yourself short. Knowledge always finds its use. They rode on, the conversation flowing more easily as the miles passed. Sarah learned that Ethan had grown up in Texas, the son of Polish immigrants who had come to America seeking a better life. His father had been a blacksmith, his mother a seamstress. Both had died in a fever epidemic when Ethan was 16, leaving him to make his own way in the world. Started as a horse wrangler, worked my way up to trail boss by 25, he told her. Been with the Circle T for 3 years now, running cattle drives and scouting new territory. It sounds like a lonely life, Sarah ventured. Ethan shrugged. It has its moments, but there's a freedom to it that suits me. He paused, then added more quietly, or suited me at least. Lately I've been thinking there might be more to life than endless trails. Something in his tone made Sarah's pulse quicken slightly, though she couldn't say why. What more were you thinking of? Before Ethan could answer, a shot rang out, the bullet kicking up dirt just ahead of Bucephalus. The horse reared, and Ethan's arm shot out to steady Sarah as he controlled the animal with his other hand. Get down, he commanded, guiding the horse behind a large boulder off the trail. He helped Sarah dismount quickly, then drew his revolver. Stay here. Who's shooting at us? Sarah whispered, crouching behind the rock. Don't know yet, Ethan replied grimly, but I aim to find out. He cautiously peered around the boulder, scanning the ridgeline above them. Another shot cracked the air, chipping rock fragments from their shelter. That's close enough, Zankowski, a voice shouted. We just want the woman. Sarah felt ice form in her veins as she recognized the voice. It's Miller, she whispered. Ethan's expression darkened. And probably not alone. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a second, smaller revolver, which he handed to Sarah. You know how to use one of these? Sarah stared at the weapon, then nodded hesitantly. My father taught me. For protection on the frontier, he said. Good. Last resort only. Ethan checked his own weapon. 3 of them, from what I can see. Miller and 2 others. What do they want with me? Sarah asked, though she feared she already knew. Nothing good, Ethan replied. Willoughby's likely behind this. Men like him don't like loose ends. You're outgunned, Cowboy, Miller called. Hand over the schoolmarm and you can ride away. This isn't your fight. Seems like it is now, Ethan muttered. To Sarah he said, Stay low. I'm gonna try to circle behind them. Ethan, no. They'll kill you. They'll have to catch me first. He gave her a reassuring smile. I've dealt with worse odds. Before she could protest further, Ethan had slipped away, moving stealthily through the underbrush along the trail. Sarah clutched the small revolver, her heart hammering in her chest. She had never shot at a person and prayed she wouldn't have to start now. Minutes stretched by with agonizing slowness. Then, from the ridge, she heard shouts and the sound of a scuffle. Another shot rang out, followed by a cry of pain. Sarah closed her eyes, dreading what might be happening. Suddenly, a figure stumbled down the slope toward her hiding place. She raised the revolver, hands shaking, then lowered it when she recognized Ethan. Blood stained his left sleeve, but he was moving under his own power. "We need to go," he said urgently. "Now. You're hurt." "Just grazed." One of them's down with a twisted ankle, another with a face full of dirt, but Miller's still coming. Ethan helped her mount Bucephalus, then swung up behind her, grimacing slightly at the movement. "Hold on tight." They galloped away from the ambush site, taking a game trail that branched off from the main road. Behind them, Miller's curses faded into the distance. "Where are we going?" Sarah called over her shoulder. "Still Preston's place, but the long way around," Ethan replied. "He's a friend. We'll be safe there." They rode hard for nearly an hour, the horse's powerful strides eating up the miles. Sarah could feel Ethan's blood seeping through his shirt sleeve where it pressed against her back, but he never complained or slowed their pace. Finally, as they crested a rise, a small ranch came into view. A modest house, a barn, and several corrals spread across a green valley nestled between protective hills. An older man with a gray beard emerged from the barn as they approached, his hand resting casually near the rifle slung across his back. When he recognized Ethan, his posture relaxed. "Zankowski, wasn't expecting you till tomorrow." His eyes narrowed as he took in Ethan's bloodied sleeve and Sarah's presence. "Trouble?" "Some," Ethan admitted as they dismounted. "Preston, this is Miss Sarah Norris." "Sarah, Thomas Preston." The rancher tipped his hat to Sarah. "Madam." Then to Ethan, "Miller's boys." Ethan nodded grimly. "How'd you guess?" "Heard they were looking for a schoolteacher who'd gone missing from Silver Creek. Put two and two together." Preston gestured toward the house. "Come on in. Let's get that arm looked at, and you can tell me the whole story." Inside, Preston's home was simple but comfortable. While he helped Ethan clean and bandage his wound, Sarah explained everything that had happened, from Willoughby's advances to their ambush on the trail. Preston listened without interrupting, his weathered face growing increasingly grim. When she finished, he shook his head. "Willoughby's had this coming for years. You're not the first woman he's tried to ruin, Miss Norris. But I may be the first to cause him this much trouble," Sarah said, the realization dawning on her. "He won't stop looking for me, will he?" "Not right away," Preston agreed. "But you're welcome to stay here as long as needed. I've been meaning to hire a tutor for my granddaughter anyway. She lives with me since my son and his wife passed in the influenza outbreak 2 years back." Sarah blinked in surprise. "You'd hire me? Without references?" Preston snorted. "References? Girl, I've known Vernon Willoughby for 15 years. The fact that you stood up to him is all the character reference I need." Hope flickered in Sarah's heart, but she glanced uncertainly at Ethan, whose expression had grown unreadable. That's very kind, Mr. Preston. I'd need to think about it." Preston nodded, understanding in his eyes as they flicked between Sarah and Ethan. "Of course, no rush. Now I need to check on those new calves. You two make yourselves at home. Supper's at sundown." When he had gone, an awkward silence fell between Sarah and Ethan. His wound had proven to be a shallow graze along his upper arm, painful but not serious. Still, she felt responsible. "You could have been killed because of me," she said quietly. Ethan shook his head. "They weren't trying to kill me, just scare me off." He flexed his arm carefully, testing the bandage. "Besides, I made the choice to help you. Don't take that away from me by blaming yourself." Sarah studied his face, the strong lines of his jaw and the kindness in his eyes. In just a day, this man had risked everything for her, a stranger. And now, she realized with a flutter in her chest, he didn't feel like a stranger at all. "Why did you really help me, Ethan?" she asked softly. "The truth. Ethan looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. When I saw you in that stable, standing your ground even though you were scared, I don't know. Something just clicked. He ran a hand through his hair, seemingly struggling to find the right words. I've been drifting for years, Sarah. Moving from job to job, place to place. Never staying long enough to put down roots. But lately I've been feeling like maybe it's time for something different. And what would that be? Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper. A home. Land of my own. Maybe. He met her eyes directly. Maybe someone to share it with. The words hung between them, full of possibility. Sarah felt her heart race, surprised by the intensity of her response to this man she'd known for such a short time. Preston's offer is generous, Ethan continued. You'd be safe here. Have time to decide what you really want. And what if what I want isn't here? Sarah asked, taking a step closer to him. Ethan's eyes darkened slightly. Where else might it be? I don't know yet, she admitted. But I think I'd like the chance to find out. Before either could say more, the door opened and Preston returned, breaking the moment. Sorry to interrupt, but there's riders coming. Looks like Miller and some others. Ethan was instantly alert, moving to the window. How many? 5, including the sheriff, Preston said grimly. They're still a ways out. Sarah felt panic rising. They're going to take me back. No, they're not, Ethan said firmly. Preston, is that old mine shaft on your property still accessible? The older man nodded. South Ridge. It's where I've been keeping my best horses lately, away from rustlers. You thinking of hiding out there? Just until we figure this out, Ethan confirmed. Sarah, gather your things. We need to move quickly. Within minutes, they were riding away from the house, following Preston, who led them along a winding path up a wooded hillside. The mine entrance was well concealed by brush and fallen trees, but inside, the first 100 feet had been converted to a makeshift stable, currently housing 3 fine-looking horses. You two can stay in the back section, Preston explained, lighting a lantern. There's a small chamber with supplies and bedrolls. I'll deal with Miller and his bunch. Send them on a wild goose chase toward Leadville. We can't ask you to lie for us, Sarah protested. Preston waved away her concern. Those men burned down my son's store 5 years ago when he wouldn't sell to Willoughby. I owe them nothing. His expression softened. Besides, I've seen the way you two look at each other. Sometimes the right person comes along at the wrong time. You deserve a chance to figure things out without Willoughby's shadow hanging over you. After Preston left, Sarah and Ethan settled into the small chamber he had mentioned. It was surprisingly comfortable, with wooden platforms built for sleeping, crates of supplies, and even a small ventilation shaft that kept the air fresh. Someone had clearly used it as a hideout before. What happens now? Sarah asked as they sat by the light of a single lantern. Ethan leaned back against the rough wall. We wait. Give Miller and his men time to search elsewhere. He studied her face in the lamplight. Then we need to decide what comes next. We? Sarah questioned softly. If you want there to be a we, Ethan replied, his voice equally soft. I know it's fast, Sarah. Too fast, maybe. But I haven't felt this way about anyone before. Sarah's heart leaped at his words. It was fast, impossibly, irrationally fast. Yet she couldn't deny the connection that had formed between them, forged in danger and strengthened by mutual respect. Tell me about your dreams, she said. The land you want to buy, the home you want to build. Ethan's eyes lit up as he described his vision. A cattle ranch in Wyoming territory, with good water and protection from winter storms. A comfortable house built with his own hands, large enough for a family. Fields for growing hay and vegetables. A stable of fine horses. It sounds wonderful, Sarah said when he finished. A place worth building a life around. It would be, Ethan agreed, especially with the right partner. He reached out hesitantly, taking her hand in his. I know teaching is your calling, Sarah. I wouldn't ask you to give that up. There are children everywhere who need education, Sarah said, squeezing his hand. Even in Wyoming territory. The hope that bloomed in Ethan's eyes made Sarah's breath catch. Are you saying you'd consider coming with me? I'm saying I'd consider building something together, she replied. If that's what you're asking. Ethan moved closer, his eyes never leaving hers. It is. When his lips met hers, Sarah felt as though all the chaos of the past 24 hours faded away. This kiss, her first, was gentle and questioning, full of promise rather than demand. She responded with her own tentative exploration, her hands finding their way to his shoulders. When they finally parted, Sarah was breathless, her cheeks flushed in the lamplight. That was the beginning, Ethan finished, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. If you'll have it so. They talked through the night, sharing stories from their pasts and dreams for their futures, finding more common ground with each passing hour. By the time Preston returned in the morning with news that Miller and his men had departed, convinced their quarry had fled north, Sarah and Ethan had made their decision. We're heading to Wyoming, Ethan told Preston as they prepared to leave the mine hideout. I know a place near the Circle T that's for sale. Good land, fair price. Preston nodded approvingly. And you, Miss Norris? Found your calling after all. Sarah smiled, looking at Ethan. I believe I have, though I still intend to teach, wherever we settle. Well, before you go, I have a proposition, Preston said. Those men who came yesterday? Let something slip that might interest you. Seems Willoughby's been skimming from the school fund for years. The sheriff's suspicious but needs proof. My ledger, Sarah gasped. In my carpet bag. I noticed discrepancies in the accounts but thought it was just poor bookkeeping. That's why Willoughby was so eager to get my personal belongings. He knew I had evidence. Preston grinned. Exactly. Now, I've sent word to the county judge, who's no friend of Willoughby's. They'll be here tomorrow, with your testimony and those records. Willoughby could lose everything, Ethan finished, understanding dawning on his face. Would you stay one more day? Preston asked. Help bring that man to justice? Might make it safer for you both in the long run. Sarah and Ethan exchanged a look, a silent communication passing between them. We'll stay, Sarah decided. I won't run from the truth anymore. The next 24 hours passed in a flurry of activity. The county judge, a stern-faced man named Holbrook, arrived with 2 deputies. Sarah presented her evidence, the school ledger showing funds allocated for supplies and repairs that never materialized, all signed off by Willoughby himself. Embezzlement of public funds is a serious offense, Judge Holbrook declared after reviewing the documents. Combined with the testimony about his inappropriate behavior toward a school employee, I believe we have grounds for immediate action. By sunset, word reached Preston's ranch that Willoughby had been arrested. Without his protection, Miller and his men had quickly scattered, unwilling to face the consequences of their actions. The town council, eager to distance themselves from scandal, had sent a letter offering Sarah her teaching position back, with a substantial raise. Are you tempted? Ethan asked as they sat on Preston's porch, watching the sun sink below the mountains. To go back, prove them all wrong. Sarah shook her head, leaning against his shoulder. That part of my life is over. Besides, she added with a smile, I believe someone mentioned Wyoming has a shortage of qualified teachers. Ethan's arm tightened around her. That it does. And one particular piece of Wyoming is going to need a woman's touch to turn it into a proper home. 3 days later, with Sarah's carpet bag considerably heavier thanks to the reward money from exposing Willoughby's scheme, they departed Preston's ranch. The old rancher had become a friend, promising to visit them once they were settled. As they rode away, Sarah seated comfortably on a horse Preston had insisted on giving her. "Consider it payment for tutoring my granddaughter until you left." She couldn't help marveling at how much her life had changed in less than a week. "Having second thoughts?" Ethan asked, noticing her contemplative expression. Sarah shook her head, smiling at the man who had transformed from rescuer to partner in such a short time. "Not at all. Just thinking about how sometimes being forced into the street after midnight can lead to exactly where you're meant to be." Ethan reached across the space between their horses, taking her hand in his. "The night is over for you, Sarah Norris, and our day is just beginning." 6 months later, in the spring of 1876, Sarah stood on the porch of a newly constructed cabin, watching as Ethan worked with the small herd of cattle they had purchased with their combined savings. The Wyoming territory stretched before them, wild and beautiful, their 100 acres nestled against the foothills of the Bighorn Mountains. Inside the cabin, books lined the shelves. Ethan had built her father's academic texts mingling with practical guides to ranching and farming. On the table lay plans for the schoolhouse they would build next, where Sarah would teach the children from neighboring ranches. Their wedding bands, simple gold circles exchanged before a traveling preacher just 2 months after leaving Colorado, caught the sunlight as she waved to her husband. As Ethan rode toward her, his face breaking into the smile that still made her heart race, Sarah thought of the night that had changed everything. From desperation to hope, from isolation to partnership, from fear to love, all because a cowboy had decided her night of trouble was over. And indeed it was. Their days together were just beginning.